Good afternoon. I'm Shannon Williams. I'm the CEO of the Home Furnishings Association, and today we are back for our second part of our two-part webinar on finance and cash flow. So specifically today, oh, sorry about that. My computer just froze. Today we're going to be talking about maximizing revenue streams and strategic growth, and really looking at how do we scale, how do we use money both on the profit and the loss side to scale operations. For those watching, webinar is recorded and available at myhfa.org/webinar. And if you have any questions, please use that Q&A button at the bottom of your screen, and we're going to get to as many of those questions as time allows. And before we get started, I just want to thank our educational thought leadership sponsor, Synchrony, for being a sponsor of our webinar series. Back with us is our three panels. We have Ronnie Ben Simon, who after 44 years with Deirdre's, which is a 10-store retailer out of Southern California, is now the president of Infinity Advantage and the creators of Infinity X Expert Retailer and Finance Software. We have Dan Jablins, the president of Retail Smart Guys, and I just found out also the lawyer on Curb Your Enthusiasm on that divorce scene. Great. Dan's part of a retail consulting firm that helps independent retailers improve cash flow by transforming business data into information that retailers need to make better purchasing decisions and maintain more positive cash flow, generate more profit. And we have Jamie Winter, who is the founder of Tools to Win and also the co-owner of Furniture Mall and a third-generation retailer who has been in the family business since 2009. And his experience really in broad price point retail has helped guide his development of Tools to Win that helps turn point of sale data into actionable information for the furniture industry. So let's start right at the top. Let's start talking about how retailers can consider maximizing revenue streams. And the number one question that comes in, not just on this webinar, but really on most of them, is how to increase sales. And I know a big topic that we've been talking a lot about is diversifying revenue streams. Can we start by talking about the importance of diversification just to maintain financial stability? Jamie, can you kick us off?
Sure. I think really one of the keys to driving sales today and to growth is really managing every opportunity that walks in the door. I mean, I think every retailer in the country right now, from a furniture standpoint, struggling with traffic, and which really means you've got to do more with every person that walks through the door. And I do think, from all my experience in furniture, there's never been a more important time for sales management than there is right now, in terms of getting back in touch and following up with guests that didn't purchase. How do I help them? How do we get them back in the store to really drive those sales and to really maximize every opportunity that you have?
How about you, Ronnie? What do you see? Do you have some new ideas? I think really what every retailer is wondering is, outside of maybe what I know or what I do, how do I really look at increasing revenue? Are there new ideas or new promotions or anything to that where I can look at just increasing sales in general?
Yeah, well, I think one easy, low-hanging fruit, and I think a lot of retailers don't do a good job at, is to really mine their own customer data. They people that have bought from them before are the most likely to come back and buy from you again. So if you've got the information on those customers and you can continue to talk to those customers, especially when times are tough, the more, whatever it is, call them to wish them happy birthday, give them special sales, make their experience. My prior retail business, when we looked at our sales, over about 75% of our sales was repeat business. So I think it's just the easiest part to get, and it's by far the cheapest part of your customer base that you can reach.
Great. Dan, do you have anything to add?
Sure. Well, a couple of things. First off, we're in an election year, and as such, traffic is a little down because it's a little too fascinating to watch what people are looking at on their screens sometimes, as opposed to going shopping. So, look, let's just sort of set the right expectation. October is going to be a wonky month. It's going to be this will. I think it's safe to say, I'm not making a political stance here. I'm just going to tell you that this is going to be the craziest election year we've ever had. I think I don't think I'm saying anything controversial there, right? It's just going to be nuts, right? So all that to say, um, even in the worst times, I started Retail Smart Guys right when the recession started in 2007, and I thought, well, I'll be homeless in a week, right? The thing that I saw was that business is created by people that choose to create business, and I think the way you promote and ask for the sale is important. What Ronnie just talked about in terms of reaching out to existing customers, super critical. I think clienteling is hugely important. And I think you have to teach your people how to clientele, when to reach out, how to do that. But let me just tell you this. The number one driver of sales at retail, the number one driver of sales at retail, and in case I wasn't clear about that, the number one driver of sales at retail is email marketing. So how often are you emailing? What are you doing in those emails? Are you creating some, I've been to a million marketing seminars. We've all been to a million marketing seminars. And the guy leading the seminar is like, he says some kind of crazy thing about what is marketing. It's when the stimulus of the hypothalamus happens in such a way there's a chemical. Well, I don't even know what you're talking about, right? Marketing is two words, creating demand. So as you look at every email you send out, does it create demand? Does it make someone say, I got to get in there and buy that thing, right? So email marketing, number one. Number two is in-store events. It's the number two driver of sales at retail. And I find that sometimes people are afraid to do in-store events. It sort of flashes back to, what if I had a party in high school and nobody showed up? Okay. But I think, they did surveys of both Generation Z and Generation A. By the way, there's Generation A now, which is after Generation Z. I guess we're going to the alphabet again, is what's going to happen. But both Generation Z and Generation A said the same thing in surveys by the National Retail Federation, which was, I like looking online, but I want to go in store and have an experience. It's so important for them to have an in-store experience. And if you're a furniture store, I think the other way to drive revenue in this whole thing is, and we're talking about diversification a little bit, is like, don't just have furniture, have some grab and go items, have some, home decor stuff, daily use stuff, that kind of thing that causes people to come to the store while they're looking at that couch that they really want to buy, and you can sort of drive some revenue while that's happening. So I think, you have to stop and think about how you're marketing the store, what you're doing to market the store. I'm a big fan of email. I'm a big fan of in-store events. And yeah, you got to do some social media stuff, but that's not going to move the needle. That's not going to get the door open. What's going to open the door for you is email marketing and in-store events.
You mentioned a little bit on the grab and go as like a diversified product. Can we talk a little bit more about how to, like, what should retailers be considering when they think about diversified product, especially with maybe limited resource into new inventory?
I think you got to, think about, as you think about furniture and you think about the rooms of furniture that you're selling, right? What else would someone put in that room that I'm not selling right now that I could offer? I learned this in the fashion industry. People in the fashion industry, what they do a lot of times is they look at the bags of the people that walk in the store to see where else they were before this, right? That's opportunities that they could be missing. In this world, I think it's, what are other things that are going to go in the living room, in the kitchen, in the bedroom that I'm not offering that I could put a small, tight capsule of that might drive might drive some sales and some revenue for us.
How about you, Jamie? I know that Furniture Mall of Kansas has diversified. Can you tell us a little bit more about that experience?
Yeah, I would say there's for most furniture retailers, there's really three categories I think that you can really focus on to make an immediate impact in sales. One is mattresses, second is protection, and the third is delivery. Those are three things that you can change overnight, the results with those, without, with very little cost. Furniture stores have a huge advantage over mattress stores because we have traffic. We have a lot more traffic than any mattress store is. So the goal is we've got to convert furniture shoppers into mattress shoppers or mattress buyers. And you can do that with discounts in store. You can do that with a free gift with a test rest. Right now we're doing, which has been very successful for us, is we're offering free delivery if you buy a mattress. So, our normal delivery fees, you're looking at upholstery, if somebody asks us how much is our delivery, we're saying our delivery is free if you purchase a mattress. So immediately you've changed the topic of discussion from upholstery to mattresses, and we're gaining sales from that, just from that simple change of terminology. And the same goes
Incredible.
for delivery and protection. You know, those are two areas that you can really focus on in store. You can run contests with your staff. You can do lots of different things to immediately change results with those two things.
Ronnie, did you have something you wanted to add?
Yeah, and in terms of diversification, and I know it was a completely different market because we offered financing, so it opened a lot of avenues for us in the past, where we were selling travel, airline tickets, hotels, and jewelry, optical, a lot of different things. And I'm not suggesting everybody even think about those things or go into those things, but there are things that you can find. Like we mentioned, I mean, a lot of dealers are still not selling protection or bed guards, or all the different things that are add-ons. And like Dan was saying, anything that goes with the room. I mean, you need to have a decent accessory selection, and not only diversifying across the ways, you can diversify up too. If you can find step ups and educate your salespeople on when somebody comes in, to make the sale, to try to get them into, better goods, it will help a lot. I do want to add one more thing to what Dan was saying on the email marketing. Something that's we're finding with our customers are having a lot of success with is text marketing. Now, it's a tricky area because you have to be careful that you're not, texting people who don't want to be texts. But with a good record keeping of people that are opting out or opting into your texts are open. Almost every text is opened, and so if you can do you're reaching customers very quickly, and it's been very, very effective for our customers.
For retailers, I'm sorry, go ahead, Dan.
I'm good, Chairman, on that one. We see a lot of success in texting too. Actually, texting internationally is stronger than nationally, and WhatsApp is also stronger internationally than here in the U.S. But the thing I would tell you about texting also is that the unsubscribe rate can get pretty high, but the ones that stay are good hardcore customers. And if you send out a blast to those text guys, they're going to come and buy. So you're going to get a smaller set of people to reach out to, but those people are good customers, and they're the ones that are going to, when you do it, they're going to react. They're going to come and buy.
And it's very inexpensive.
Yeah.
What are you suggesting that they're using those texts for? Just as a, hey, don't forget we're here, come in and purchase, or there's a free gift giveaway? Like what do you suggest they're using that text for?
Well, first, I think you can't be too intrusive with their text, so you can't do it too often. But I'll give you can respond very quickly. So let's say we've got a couple of customers that they had keyed up air conditioner, a good price on an air conditioner, and all you got to do is watch the weather. If you see it getting into the 90s, you get those texts out. People are suffering out in their homes right now, and they get a text from you that you've got something they need right now. It's very, very effective.
That's fair. So for retailers that are considering diversification or are diversifying, are there any indicators that would tell them that it's time to accelerate that diversification?
Well, I mean, I think anybody that's struggling with sales right now is looking for every opportunity to grow and to maintain where they're at. So obviously, right now is a fantastic time and necessary time for many people to maintain their sales and their cash flow.
I think it's a constant search. I think this, even when the economy is great, you want to look for those places where you can get some more revenue out of it. I mean, you hear Ronnie's story and you hear what he did with his stores, and the number of places they sought out opportunities. They didn't sit still for a second. They constantly were seeking out new opportunities, new places to drive more selling, to make a bigger impact with their customers and provide value to those customers. It wasn't just like, what can I sell? It's also, what does my customer need, and how do I become a better friend to them? And I think that's an important part of what we're talking about here is like, customers want convenience. They want um, they want convenience, they want simplicity, right? If I could walk into, one place and knock it all out, get the room done, get my financing, get all the accoutrement I want for the room, all the extras, that kind of stuff, and feel like I did it all in one shot, and got it all done and it was all coordinated. And a lot of people worry about things like design elements, like, okay, well, if I bought the furniture there, but am I going to now buy a lamp that's awful and ruin the whole room, right? Because I have a taste level, but I'm not sure if I'm right. But your buyers and your designers can help them put together an exact right room, and they walk out with something that's fantastic. That's how you make lifelong customers.
Fair. One of the questions that came in was just generally, what strategies should retailers be considering to maximize revenue in the economic situation that we're in? I've heard some different things like mining your data, mining your customer list. I've heard adding some more grab and go, add grab and go items, or diversifying your product mix. Is there anything else that you would suggest to a retailer that's just struggling with revenue right now?
I would
Yeah, I
look
would say,
at, go ahead, Dan. I mean, Jamie.
I was going to say, in terms of advertising, I do believe that, extreme values right now is very important. Everybody's tight on money, and showing things that are an extremely low price to get people in the door, I think is very important. Whether it's $199 queen mattress, or a $599 complete bedroom set, whatever it is, it's just a crazy value that anybody can understand that that's a significant value, is going to drive traffic to your store. And then once you get the traffic there, then most likely most people are going to upgrade once they get there. But the key is to get them in the door. And right now, with everybody that's tight on money and so forth, that extreme value message is critically important.
Ryan, did you have something you wanted to add?
Sure, I would look at doing some kind of customer retention program or loyalty program where they can earn whatever percentage of dollars from you every time they buy, or points, whatever it is, something that will draw the customer back, and even more important, something that you have to advertise to the customer, where if you've got a good tracking system, you can send them things. We used to do it, and we used to send it, send ads out to them before Mother's Day, before Christmas, so they could come in and get some smaller items with the dollars that they'd been built up.
Yeah, and I would completely agree with that. We're seeing several retailers have great success with loyalty or rewards programs right now, because it gives you so many more reasons for a touch point with your customer, whether it's a happy birthday text or happy birthday message. And by the way, we're going to add $25 to your loyalty program
Right.
because it's your birthday. Come see us when you get a chance. Or it's been a year since your last purchase. Here's a $50 coupon to come in and spruce up what you bought a year ago. All those types of things just give you easy reasons to contact your customer and get them back in the door.
Or if you were offering, let's say, 5%, you can have this weekend, you'll earn 15%. I mean, you can create events out of it, not just what they've already earned, but what they can still earn.
Correct.
And I'm going to sort of chime in with something maybe a little bit different. It's funny, I was having this conversation literally yesterday with a couple of the guys that are working with lots of other retail stores, and there is sort of this promoted idea that money is tight right now, and that people and stores are struggling and stuff like that. Not everywhere. There's plenty of places where we're still seeing some pretty decent growth. And here's the thing. Like I said, when I started this company, we were like, jumping into the recession headlong, right? That said, business is done because we make business, right? And marketing, if you just go with my little two-word definition of creating demand, right? And you look at what you have in your store, you have to look at it and go like, okay, what's going to make someone want to buy this now? What is the thing that creates the demand that makes someone go, you know what? I, we're not going to go away this year because money's tight, if you believe that, right? Let's at least dress up the house, right? During COVID, when nobody went anywhere, the home furnishings thing had like this amazing renaissance because people wanted to do stuff because they were sitting around their house going, you know what? man, this room is ugly. I should do something about it, right? You know, if you create enough demand, people find the money. So I think you have to really, I would shake off the idea that people don't have money. I think there's some truth to that. I'm not saying there isn't. But what I am saying is like, you almost have to go, okay, even if that's true, how am I going to now create so much demand for what I have that people are going to go, you know what? This is an opportunity. I got to take it right now. This is something I want. I need it right now, right? I was amazed during COVID. I had some stores that did incredible marketing things with things that you would think, okay, nobody's working. How's this going to happen? You know what I mean? And it was not what, and people sometimes think, well, it was the, you know, the additional money the government gave out. That's what drove business during COVID. That wasn't enough money. That's not the reason. The reason was that people, you know, were bored and wanted things, and demand got created by people that were effective at creating demand. And that's what marketing is all about. How do you create demand? How do I make someone go, I gotta have this thing, I gotta have it now?
We got a comment in the chat that was really relevant, but leveraging open to buy as well on credit cards. So when you're opening up credit cards or financing for that, not only do you have a repeat customer base, you actually know how much money they have available on that credit card for remarketing opportunities.
You know,
Jan-
listen,
Absolutely.
open to buy is my life, right? That's what I do all day. But and I'm a big believer in open to buy, mostly because the other way open to buy creates revenue is you're not sitting there going, I hope somebody buys something, right? You're looking at your inventory and your sales on a category by category basis and figuring out what is my inventory and what are my and what should my sales be, and planning my inventory to line up with my sales and make that work. And that's certainly true in some of these other categories that we're talking about that, you know, are not hardcore furniture ones where we're going to special order them, you know, things that we're going to have in inventory. And, you know, as much as we're talking about generating revenue because we're talking about cash flow, I think, you know, the other thing is that you can actually make more money as a store if you don't do as much sales, but you're turning faster, which a good open to buy system should be providing for you, right? So if my turns are a 2, but I can get them to a 3, which means I'm investing less in inventory, I could actually sell less and make more money.
So a question that came in that I think is a great question. I'm going to put this directly at you, Dan, and then I'll have the other guys jump in. What wins in the long run? High margin, low volume, or low margin, high volume?
Yes. I don't think there's a single answer to that question. I think it depends on the category. I think there's certain categories that you know you're going to go low margin, high volume, and then you've got to buy for that, and you've got to market for that, and you've got to make sure your salespeople are teed up for that. And then there are certain ones that are high margin, low volume. But you know, especially when you're thinking about cash flow, you know, the high margin, low volume ones are the home runs that happen, right? But anybody who knows anything about baseball knows you got to hit a bunch of singles. You can't just hit home runs to win games, right? So I think, you know, you have to have a blend of that, and you have to think through the what does the sales plan look like on that? What does my inventory plan look like? And therefore, what is the resulting cash flow as a result of that? It was my perfect non-answer for
Yeah.
that,
Thank you
but
so much for your
Well, Jamie, I actually, I hate that question because it takes me back to my my college economics classes, in that the answer lies in assumptions here. And I don't think everybody has the ability to just decide on high margin or low margin. If you're going to be low margin, you damn well better be really efficient operator, because your whole game now is price, and you better be able to compete with all the big guys. And chances are you can't do it. And again, you just can't raise your prices and expect that, okay, that people will continue buying at maybe a little lesser level. They may dry up completely. So I think the real question is, you know, what kind of value you can create for your customers, and at the margins that you'd like to try to get here. And I think you have to approach it more on that side of it.
Yeah, and I would say that, you know, according to, you know, Dan's answer, yes, but you know, you can be successful with either one of those strategies, and you can fail with either one of those strategies. All depends on where you're at and what your customer base is and where you focus. But I do think having a mixture of both right now is important. That you've got to have things that can really turn quickly, and that can drive traffic and sell something every day. And then you've got to have some things where you make margin and be able to pay your bills. And you got to have a mixture of both right now, I think, for most retailers.
I
With-
think Jamie had said earlier too, it makes a lot of sense too. I think you've got to give the impression that you are a low margin company by, really burning some prices, getting people in the door, and then having a well-trained staff to be able to show that customer, better goods or add-ons, or, if you're going to diversify, to maybe bring in some televisions and sell them with that beautiful, living room set that you're selling them.
I'm gonna sneak in two more comments to that one. First, there's a guy named Harry Friedman. He wrote a book called No Thanks, I'm Just Looking. Some of you know that book. A lot of you know that book. Jamie too, right? He says in that book, you show till they say no, no, no. It's very easy to walk into any store and not see things. The job of the salesperson is not to twist someone's arm to buy something. It's to make sure they've seen everything, right? So I think that's part of it, and that's part of, every salesperson. If I walk over to any product in your store, what are 2 or 3 things you could think of that are companions to that I could show or talk about, so that I'm always talking about more things that happen there, right? The second thing I would say is the job of a buyer for these stores is to constantly scour the marketplace and look for opportunities. Okay, so even though we're talking about low margin add-ons like a candle or something like that, that may be a low margin, there's also plenty of places where you might find some great margin opportunities in lower priced things that can actually move the needle also and get you some cash too. So I think you got to constantly be looking at what else is out there. I think, the big mistake a lot of people make when they go to trade shows is they go to see people they already know. I think you go to shows and look for people you don't know. I think you go shop other stores in your neighborhood, shop other stores in other cities and see what they're doing. I think, the job of a buyer is to constantly and consistently look for new products that are going to delight and excite your customers and make them want to come in. And then that becomes part of that email thing. Hey, we just landed this new thing, whatever that is, right? Ronnie said TV sets. We have the most amazing TV sets now, right? So imagine this is your couch and this is your TV, and somebody sitting there at home is going to go like, you know what, I want that.
Absolutely.
The electronics and appliance people have added on, betting a lot of people. I mean, there's no reason why some furniture people can also get into some expanded products too. They go together. They're all for the home.
Yeah, I think some of our most successful retailers, we've seen them by sales volume, have really diversified into things like flooring, electronics, remodels, having a design, beyond the furniture and design world. Dan, can you move your mic up just a little bit? You brought up the Friedman. You brought me back to my early entry into the furniture retail side. The Friedman tapes we based all of our training on, and it holds a special memory in my heart, because I remember our rebuttal to a customer saying, "I'm just killing time," was, "What did time ever do to you?" So good old Friedman. So we talked a little bit about inventory. Can we talk a little bit about how do we cut costs with inventory, but still maximize revenue and growth?
Sure. Well, I'll start, and I'll tell you what we used to do. Inventory can be overwhelming to try to handle it all, but you don't need to handle it all. The way we used to break things down is, you're going to need something that can give you the numbers that you need, or how things are selling, where your dogs are, everything else. But we would take the top 20% and the bottom 20%. The bottom 20%, you want to put all your focus on to get rid of those things. The top 20%, you want to make sure that you are giving it every benefit that you can give it, best spots on the floor, anything you could do. You want to keep those stars. The other 60% in the middle, you don't have to worry. They're going to sooner or later, they're going to move into the top 20 or the bottom 20. You just keep working the top 20 and the bottom 20. The rest of it will fall into place.
I'm in total agreement with that. I think one of the things that, especially if we're talking about cash flow, I think that first off, if you've got inventory that's been with you for a while, old inventory is not your friend, and I think you need to cash out of that find ways to move that, get out of there. And I talked about turn before. I think it's still, you know, an important, you know, the cost of inventory sometimes happens because it's bloated because we bought stuff that's been around since the Carter administration, and now we need to get out of it, right? So I think part of that is like, how do we get out of some of these old goods and let that and use that cash to buy something that's new and fresh and fun.
Yeah, and I would say, a lot of times when cash gets tight and people start working on inventory, they kind of cut back on everything, which is a big mistake in
Agreed.
my viewpoint. I mean, you cannot be out of your best sellers because it's going to kill your cash flow because you're going to prevent your sales happening. So you've got to have the best sellers in stock, as Ronnie was saying. And then you've got to take a haircut on the stuff that's in the warehouse that's been there too long. You got to sell it at cost or under cost or something to get your cash out of it. And like we talked about last session is, use it to drive traffic. If you're going to burn it at cost or under cost, and use it to drive traffic to your store, has a crazy value, but you've got to get rid of it.
Would you suggest anything strategically for balancing inventory costs with demand fluctuations? Outside of obviously, getting rid of what's holding up cash in your warehouse that's not selling.
Well, I think Ronnie's 20%, top 20% and bottom 20% is a pretty good target to easy to manage and something to focus on.
I think that's where you start anyway. You may find that, you know, you get good at that and then you can go 25 and 25 instead of 20 and 20. But, you know, once you get good at it, once you get a rhythm at it, I guess the other thing I would say about it too is this, you know, uh, all of us on this call are numbers people. And so if you're not if you're like a, you know, if you feel like you've got a really good, strong design sense and you know what's going to, you know, you can see what's going to work in a room and that kind of thing, but you're not comfortable with the numbers, you know, I think that's where you got to start talking to people that understand the science of retail. If you're the art of retail, be the art of retail, but make sure you've got someone with you that understands the science of retail so you understand how to cash flow. You understand what a stock to sales ratio is. You understand what turn is, or you can incorporate those things into your business to make sure that you're profitable and and get good cash flow.
Are there any key considerations that retailers should be thinking about when they're considering either expanding capacity and preparing to scale operations or their capabilities?
Sure.
I think you have to have whenever you're looking at that expansion, you've got to make sure you've got a good break-even plan for that. You've got to make sure you know what your expenses are, what you're going to run into, and how that's going to work. If you're going to finance it, have you really shopped around for the best loan programs and stuff like that? And how does that going to work? And what does that mean, you know, if it doesn't work? And what's your fail safes? You know, um, you know, there's this term called fail fast, and I don't love it because fail is the first word in that. But the idea of it is just like if I try something new and it didn't work, how do I get out of it quickly and move on to, you know, as long as I've given it enough chance to do all that, have I given it enough time to make that work? And now if I've done that, what am I going to do to make it better? And make sure that I have, uh, uh, you know, make sure that I didn't create a liability that could bury me.
Yeah, and I would say, the whole focus of this series is cash flow, and usually that raises its head very clearly when you're trying to grow and add a location, and you hire staff early before you've opened the doors, and you bought inventory before you open the doors, and you always have extra expenses as you're growing and adding another location that you may not have expected. So making sure in advance that you've got enough cash to get through the opening and to get through, man, what happens if the opening gets delayed by 30 days or 60 days? How am I going to handle that? And thinking about that in advance, I think is very important. And, some of the simple ideas we talked about last time was, like, use some of your vendors to help with some of the remodel, use some of your vendors for, free floor samples or very long-term dating on your floor samples, 6 months maybe to pay for those. So you get a chance to get open and get some cash flow coming in before you got to pay all those bills.
Maybe they sponsor a party, maybe they sponsor a sales contest. I mean, there's a lot that vendors will do to keep the needle moving, but you have to ask. They're not just going to
Yes.
volunteer. You have to ask.
And
And
if you're new location works, it's a great thing for you and the vendor. So
Yeah.
they're gonna get rewarded as well. So they a lot of times will be happy to participate.
And remember, no doesn't mean never.
Right.
So I would not take the no as the final answer. I'd keep asking.
I would say when for retailers that are expanding, you've got to be ready for your new store to lose money for a year or two. It's just, part of the getting up and ready for that store to be successful. And as you open that new store, if you're a one-store operation going to two, your issues are going to double. You got to be ready. You have to have standardized procedures. Your management is going to be spread a lot thinner. You're going to need to invest in technology, because all of a sudden you've got issues of transferring things. There's a lot of things that change when you start to move into more than one store operations. And you're going to have to also make sure that those new stores, and the customer walks in there, they're going to get the same experience that they get when they walk into any of your other stores. Your culture can change very quickly when you've got somebody out there that your management is not watching anymore. And so you've got a lot of things that you're gonna have to deal with. And one thing you really have to be ready to do is you have to have a focus on your scalable resources, labor, everything else. Depending on that store is going, you may have to ramp up a lot quicker than you thought, add more people, or reduce more people.
That's a fair assumption. What one of the questions that came in was, what do you think, like for any company that's considering strategic growth, what do you think the largest headwind is today that's showing like as a trend to, stopping retailers from doing so?
Sorry, can you ask that one more time? I didn't
Yeah,
quite
what's the
get that.
largest headwind to strategic growth today?
I'm not sure I know what you mean by headwind.
I'm thinking,
Biggest challenge, probably. Biggest challenge to strategic growth.
I think that the biggest headwind. Apparently I'm not a sailor. Okay. I think the biggest challenge to strategic growth is, well, I think there's two. I think there's lack of data and fear, and probably lack of data causes fear, right? So if you're thinking about growing, I think you have to think about how you're going to grow. What does that look like? What do you want the growth to be? And then, do you have your numbers assembled in such a way that you know what that really means? And are those numbers viable and are they real? You know, I don't mean to be I'm not picking on my accountant friends, but I think sometimes people ask their accountant that question. Is probably the worst person to ask. Your accountant is there to control expenses and help you with tax preparation, maybe tax savings and stuff like that. But they're not good forecasters, and they're not certainly not good growth-driven people by and large. I think you got to look at people that are in this industry that are helping other businesses grow and get some like-minded people in the room to think that thing through and help you figure out how you can grow your business.
I think you can alleviate some of your fears on whether your store's going to be successful or not by analyzing your customer base and your potential customer base. One thing we used to do is we used to, kind of plot our sales by zip code. And if we're comparing them year to year, and we see that there's some, far out places that we just keep growing our sales in those zip codes, chances are there's a lot more customers that aren't making that drive to you. And that's probably a pretty good area for you to move. The other thing you can do is the customers that are not yours. There are, I don't know what they used to be called. They were Velasas, and before that, I don't remember what they were. But I'm sure there are other companies also that they can do studies for you. They can first analyze your customer and then go out and they can map the areas you're looking at and look and, plot them with the numbers of other customers that look like your current customers. And that kind of maximizes your success if that's the kind of customers that look at you. So I think just a general broad look at your own customers versus potential customers can, really help you find a successful, location.
Yeah, and I think, fear is definitely one of the largest challenges. And I think usually that fear resides around guessing what the volume is going to be of this new location. If your break even is 5 million and you think you can do 10, and you do 10 is fantastic.
Yeah.
If you think your break even's 5 and you end up at 3, ooh, you're in trouble. So trying to guess what that number is becomes very challenging. There are lots of tools out there now, I think, to really help with that. There's a company called PlacerData.ai that we've used to understand really traffic flows at any location. Basically, you can get the traffic into any retail location, including your own, with the data that they have, and you can analyze that and get an estimate as you're, at this new location, should your traffic be higher or less, based on where you're at today and based on, the retailers that are around that location. And you can also get all of the demographic data usually from your realtor or from buying groups also have that you can get the demographics, the average income, what is the difference between your current stores that what the volume is and this new location, and try it again. Is the average sale going to be less or more based on the household incomes and the people that are there? You can usually get a pretty good idea and start to granularly determine, what is the potential traffic? Is it going to be up or down? What is your average ticket? Is it going to be up or down? And should the close rate be up or down? And start to get a good idea as to what is the potential at that new location, instead of just taking a wild guess, because that number is so critical to determine what you can pay for rent, what you can pay for people, and to make sure it's going to be successful for you.
There
Jamie,
is
what
one
did you
other
say that
thing.
website was?
I'm sorry, say again,
What
Shannon.
did you say that website was?
Placer.ai.
Placer.ai.
And they have some free information that you can get right on the website. If you want to get all the information at every retail location, it's a paid subscription.
Go ahead,
There
Dan.
is one other, it might be a long shot, but I'm going to throw it out there anyway. We've had stores work with some folks that we know that are pop-up specialists that can get you a pop-up location. So, I'm thinking about opening a store in San Diego, California, but I'm not sure, I haven't been there. Placer AI looks good, but I'm not positive, blah, blah, blah. Before you sign a 5-year lease and you're tied into something that's going to make you unhappy, you might be able to try a pop-up thing with one of these pop-up specialists and see if it really is what you think it's going to be before you get started.
Jamie, something that you'd mentioned a lot was looking more about cost and cash saving ideas for a company that is growing. What are some cost saving strategies that can support the cash that's needed to grow?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. There's lots of things that the companies can do. And because it's cash is so important when you're growing and adding locations. And it's almost August, so it's probably time to go visit your tax accountant and start to do some planning on taxes to make sure you can preserve as much cash as you can. But just a couple basic ideas. If you are really a growing company and you are putting every dollar back into the company to grow and to add locations, your structure should be a C Corp, because your taxes are going to be much lower as a C Corp than they are at an S Corp. So for example, your effective tax rate on an S Corp is going to be about 30% after the 20% QBI deduction. And if you're a C Corp, it's going to be 21%. So you can save immediately almost 30% in taxes just by being a C Corp instead of an S Corp or an LLC. And if you're growing, that's very important. Now, if your strategy is to take as much money out as possible from the company, then you're much better as an S Corp or an LLC. But if you're growing, it's a big benefit to be a C Corp.
For owners that are looking for that balance, they both want to grow and make sure they get paid. is there an approach that they should be considering around making sure that they're using strategies like what you're talking about, but also looking at that balance between what goes back into the business and what comes out of the business?
I mean, it's all obviously always a balance, but as we've really tried to grow, we've tried to leave as much money in the business as absolutely possible because we want to grow and fund that growth. And the less that you can borrow, especially right now when interest rates can be 7 and 8%, the better off you're going to be from a long-term standpoint.
I guess what I would add to that is look, cash has been king since there ever was a king, right? So to that degree, um, if we're planning our sales and planning our inventory and turning well, and we're throwing cash off, we get to make decisions like, do I keep the cash in the business or do I take it out? But if we don't have cash flow going and we're not turning well enough, we don't even get to make that decision because we only have enough cash to survive, right? So I think part of that is where are you at strategically in making that in driving the cash to make that growth happen. And I think also, to Jamie's point, there's all kinds of loan people out there. Some are good, some are not so good. Some are just guys that know how to accept a filled out form and tell you yes or no. There are some guys that actually are connected to enough different loan programs and understand how to choreograph a loan solution. Like the loan guy that we recommend a lot is connected to literally 250 different loan programs. And so sometimes if someone doesn't have good credit or having trouble getting a loan that's a decent loan, he can get them started at one loan, but then works with them ongoingly beyond the initial loan to go, okay, you're now ready to get refinanced at this lower rate and constantly works them down that way. So it's an important strategy for that. As you're looking at the loans, if you can't get a favorable loan, how can you get into a favorable loan down the road as things progress?
I remember a retailer bringing this up, and I don't remember the exact context. So maybe I can ask you, is there a difference in strategy if an owner that's taking money out of the business is doing so with dividends versus being a W-2 employee?
I think that's a question for their accountant.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely some benefits. I mean, obviously long-term dividends are taxed at a much lower rate than your income's going to be. But then, when you go to sell, to sell a business, you kind of have the opposite effect. But having a very good tax accountant and attorney to kind of go through those scenarios is important when you're trying to make those important decisions.
So let's finish this off. I know KPIs, metrics, what metrics we use is always a really, really hot topic. I know we talked a little bit about these last week, or when we met 2 weeks ago, and I heard Dan speaking about a break-even analysis. But for those that weren't attending last time, can we talk again about which KPIs are important financially to be measuring and monitoring for business performance?
I can go first on this one. It's my life. I would say turn, sell through, and GMROI are the big three that I'm the biggest fan of.
Yeah, and I would say there's several things, specifically, there's all the different financial metrics you can look at, but specifically towards cash flow and making sure you have the right cushion. I think understanding how many months worth of expenses you've got in the bank is a critical number to know. That, if revenue shut off tomorrow, I could survive preferably 3 months or more with handling those expenses. I think that's an easy target to have a safety bank in the bank to be able to cover those types of things. And we also talked about last time about having a very simple cash statement or cash amount. How much do you have in the bank? How much do you have as your line of credit that you haven't used yet? Add those two together and then subtract your upcoming expenses that are coming, and make sure that you've got enough cash to make payroll and to make those purchase orders that are coming up. So very simple to try to start to manage that and make sure you've got some notice before you get into too much trouble.
And I would look at the income statement, and we've talked enough about the revenue side of it, but on the expense side, I would just take those that percentage of that each expense makes of your total sales, and just, you know, work on kind of try to drilling down and see how you can reduce some of those percentages in each area. Just a small changes will make huge, will have huge benefits to your bottom line.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think the one thing I gotta watch out for though, when you're doing cash flow planning though, on the P&L, when if you have loans, all that shows up in the P&L is the interest expense, not the principal.
True.
Right? So when you look at your P&L, if you're using that to try to figure out cash flow, remember that you're going to have to add principal payments to those expenses.
Yep.
And by the way, you know, the P&L, sometimes I've talked to retailers and they go, oh, I can't read that thing. I don't know what that's telling me. I'm not sure what's going on there. If you can't read your P&L, you can get your P&L to be what you want it to be. I've worked with some retailers, they go, I can't figure out what these things mean. I'm like, well, you know what? It's not etched in stone. We can make these things actually into workable things. One of the things we're very focused on is things like selling costs, right? What does it cost? What's our floor payroll versus our back office payroll, or our receiving payroll, or owner's payroll, or something like that? Because that's a very controllable cost. And you know, a lot of people just have it lumped as a payroll number. But if you break that up, you can actually see some things which are interesting. And if it's not done that way, then you just work with an accounting professional or someone who understands your accounting system to help you break that out so you can actually see those expenses. And in some cases, combine them where they're too fine and it makes the P&L 70 pages long and you can't look at it.
For sort of the metrics that you guys mentioned, are there benchmarks for them when you're kind of looking, you're deciding on growth or what to comp against? And then what kind of tools exist to actually track them?
Yeah, we
I would
talked
be,
about the safety net of the expenses, and kind of a target of having 3 months of expenses, I think is a good one to have. The other metric we talked about 2 weeks ago was really try to understand, you know, are you overstaffed or understaffed? And, you know, how do you determine that? And a lot of people in the industry right now are really trying to get to $300,000 in sales per employee. So if you're you know, if you're doing $3 million basically in sales, that means you ought to have about 10 employees. And so basically for every $3 million in sales, you ought to have 10 employees. So if you're doing 6 million in sales, you ought to have about 20. I mean, that gives you a target of how much staffing you should have, and very simple to measure and very simple to calculate and understand, you know, how much overstaffed or understaffed you are.
I would be a bit reticent to quote turn and GMROI numbers only because I think that you don't want a blended number. You want to look at that on a category by category basis, right? If we're talking about those impulse items, they should be at a faster turn than, you know, some of your hardcore furniture items are. Overall, though, in terms of a GMROI, if you're less than $2 as an overall GMROI number, that means you're going to have some cash issues. So I would look at that, and again, I'd look at the GMROI on a category by category basis to figure out where that's not happening. And if you think about GMROI, it's your profit margin divided by your average inventory at cost, right? Which is the money I'm making divided by my investment. So where are my investments working and where are they not working? Um, I think a lot of these statistics are available in some point of sale systems. Some of them are not. They are available in planning systems like the one that we offer often. Um, and if not, you know, you can also get pretty readily, you know, the math on how to do those, and you can do those. But hopefully there are systems that can give you a lot of that.
I think a good place to start is number one, you've got to be able to get the numbers, like Dan is saying. If you don't know where you're at, you're never going to get to where you want to go. And you know, regardless what people say you should be at, 2, 3, whatever it is, at least start with where you're at right now and just start working on improving that. If you're at 2 GMROI right now, let's work it up to 2.2 and just keep going from there. You will land where I mean, if you're doing a good job of running your business, you're going to land kind of where you should be in there. And kind of taking a step back to people that are growing is one nice thing about having additional stores is you now have stores to compare against each other. It really gives you, I mean, you may have managers that are just really good at running an operation. And if you can take a look at kind of what they're doing at their stores on, certain measurements that you're doing, it really gives you now some nice comparisons on, how much improvement you can expect at other stores too.
So guys, we've spent 2 hours together talking about cash flow and improving financial health. Can we go around the room and can you each give me, if you're a retailer and you're saying everything I just absorbed, where do I begin? What's the one gem that you want that you think a retailer should walk away from this 2-part series that we've had? Jamie, I'll throw this over to you first.
Yeah, there's lots of different areas that you can focus on and that we talked about. But I would say the number one thing to go implement is what you heard and found that is one of the easiest things to go implement. I mean, we can talk about all these all day long, but if you don't actually implement something, then nothing gets better. So I really think it depends on the individual, where their strengths and weaknesses are and where that particular retailer is struggling and excelling at. But if whatever actions that you took from this or ideas that you took from this, if you can go implement those quickly, those are going to have the best payback, even though they may not be the biggest actions, but getting those small improvements in now and early is critically important.
So I'll take to me, we've talked about inventory and measuring all kinds of different things, but it really all comes down to you're in business to service the customer. And if you can't keep that customer buying from you, coming back and adding additional customers, everything else doesn't matter anymore. So that to me is the number one. And the number two is that, and this is what I do now, is you need the technology to give you the numbers. You need the technology to help you run your business so you can implement all of these things that Jamie's talking about. And that's what's going to get you there.
When I was younger, when my dad was still around, he said the most dangerous thing he ever saw was me with a power tool in my hands. This is because I have absolutely no home improvement skill whatsoever. And, anytime I have to do any kind of home improvement project around this house, there's a good week of hand wringing before I even attempt it, and then I'm sure I'm going to do it wrong. I think the same is true about statistical analysis and data analysis. If you know what you're doing in that world, or you're comfortable in that world, or you feel like you can figure it out, great, go for it. But if you're not sure, or if you're not sure how to get this data out of your systems, or you're not sure how to do the math, or you're not sure what the math means even after you've calculated it, then there's so many resources that are out there, including all the people in this call, right? I mean, you've heard brilliant things from Jamie and Ronnie about some of these things. And so I would say that, if you're at all unsure about what to do, I would reach out to people that really work on the analytics side of the business and on the statistical side of the business to really understand what stats can I implement in my business, and then get on a regular diet of looking at those. I have in my calendar a moment in time each month where I stop and look at the statistics of our business, right, on the consulting side of things. There are certain numbers that I have to stop and look at to make sure that my business is progressing and doing what I want it to do. That's true of every business on planet Earth. But it's harder for retail stores because like we're open every day and the doors open and your vendors called and the UPS guy had a question and blah blah. And it's very hard to you can't just close the door and say I'm going to work on marketing for an hour, right? You're a retailer, you're live and you're there. But if you don't block out a moment of your week or your month where you're going to stop and study the numbers to figure out what the trajectory is, you're just gonna be managing on hope and luck and not based on a plan. So plan is the antidote to worry, by the way. So if I have a plan and I know what stats I'm going to look at and I know how I'm going to drive those statistics and I have a plan for that, that's how that happens. It only happens to the degree that the numbers are right. It happens to the degree that you understand the story that the numbers are telling you, and that you can convert those numbers into an action plan that's going to make a difference to the business. I think that's so critical in all of this. And I think that's important to what we're talking about here is it's not like, okay, well, I'm going to go figure out what turn is. If you don't have a way to get that number out of your system and you're not sure how to get it, don't abandon it and don't guess at it because it's key. Find out how to get it. Reach out to to people who understand that well and make sure you know how to get that number and ongoingly get that number so you can evaluate it.
That's great insight. I love what you said. Dan, plans the antidote to worry. And earlier you said fear is one of the reasons that people don't strategically grow. And so what I heard is use your resources, mind your current database, lean into technology if you have it. If you don't have that knowledge, lean into someone that does, and start with where you can actually easily implement things. Gentlemen, I appreciate all the time that you guys have spent with us over the last 2 sessions. Really look forward to connecting with you again in the future. And if there's anybody out there that needs any support, Dan Javelins, Ronnie Ben Simon, excuse me, and Jamie Winter are here to support you. Please reach out to the Home Furnishings Association if you'd like any connections. And we look forward to seeing you at our next webinar. Hope everyone has a great sales weekend, and we will see you at the next webinar.
Can I sneak in one thing really fast, Sean? I know we're out of time, but this weekend there's a HFA event in Vegas, right? This coming weekend. So if you guys are going to be in Vegas or can be in Vegas, I'm doing a presentation there. It's always a great show. It's always great to be in Vegas with you guys. And the HFA is a great resource. So I hope that all of you on this webinar are reaching out to the HFA because they can do a lot to help your business too.
Thanks so much, Dan. See you this weekend in Vegas.
See you in Vegas.
Take care, guys.